Great. So our first stream is transformation. And you have probably noticed that the world is developing faster than ever before, right? We're living in global and exponential times, and it's super hard to predict even a couple of years ahead. So we will have a futurist kick off Ping this year. She is a futurist who has worked with Nokia, IKEA, Puma, just to name a few, and she has said that the future is not a place we go, but one we create. So please give a big round of applause to the futurist, Lise Kjaer.
Good morning, everyone. Are you all excited? Yes. Great, so am I. As a keynote speaker, I think you're always a little bit nervous. We had actually the discussion behind the scene, and Nick said to me, yes, I always feel a little bit nervous too. But actually, in the terms of the brain, the fear and anxiety is the same feeling as being excited. So let's all say, yes, we feel excited. So say it. We all feel excited. We all feel excited. Yes, and I feel excited. Now, in order to understand the future, we need to look at the past and the present. And one of my favorite philosophers, his name is Marshall McLuhan. He once said that we march backwards into the future. And I think that's interesting. When we look at today's society, it's quite interesting to observe that in a time where we are easier to reach than ever, more and more brands are seen as being not relevant anymore. When you ask people, 1 in 5 will tell you that most brands could disappear tomorrow and they wouldn't even care. So I believe that many businesses need to rethink their purpose. I mean, why will people get up in the morning and go work for you? Why would people buy your product or services? And perhaps more interestingly, why will people invest in your business? Tomorrow's map of success will definitely change to a much more balanced outlook on the future. I believe that the capital P in leadership is purpose. And in that context, we need to engage in a much more meaningful dialogue about the future. And of course, that is all to do with really tapping into the emotional landscape of people. I love this one here, the case study, The School of Life. And it was founded by a philosopher, Alain de Botton, an artist and a psychologist and a group of writers. And what they all had in common was they wanted to teach the world about emotional intelligence, and they were passionate about, I should say, lifelong learning. Alain de Botton once said that the pursuit of happiness, fulfillment and human flourishing is in fact the future of business. But the question is, of course, how do we tap into new thinking in order to cultivate everyone's interest? I believe the question or the answer to that question is multidimensional thinking, because that is how you unleash your creativity and tap into your true purpose, the purpose of what you want to do as a leader, but also the purpose of your organization. In the past, businesses only really focus on the P for profit. It was very much about left brain thinking. Perhaps they also added people to the equation, but that was about it. In the 21st century, we need to tap into the 4P bottom line, which is all about caring for people and planet, having a purposeful ethos to match that, because that is key to better performance. So we need to really tap into a new way of measure success. The idea of multidimensional thinking is also how I look at trends. So I'm a futurist. I work with designers, artists, architects, anthropologists, sociologists, all of the human sciences. But also we work with marketing people and others out there in order to really understand that sort of multi-dimensional horizon scan. This trend atlas is a system that I invented. It's sort of a strategic toolkit to understand the core building blocks of the future. It's a little bit like the Lego bricks. All of those, you can build nice stories about the future. And what we do in our group is that we study the multiple layers in society, the socio-economics, which are called the pestle trends. So pestle is P for politics, E for economics, S for societal trends, T for technology, E for environment, and L for legislation. But if you only tap into those drivers of tomorrow's society, you get a very left-brain outlook of the future. So you also need to engage the emotional dimension, which is very much about well-being, lifestyle choices, but also the spiritual dimension, which talks to us about people's ethics and their values. Now, this is just to give you an example about how futurists are thinking. We all have access to data, and I should say we perhaps have access to too much data, and most of us don't know what to do with this. So the right tools for analyzing the things that we know or we see, and also the right tools for applying that knowledge will be crucial in order to engage in meaningful dialogue with your community, both today and in the future. Now, to get you inspired, get you in the mood, and you will probably hear other things later today that taps into my thinking, I thought I would cherry pick some of the most important, I would say, society trends that will have a profound impact on both tomorrow's brands, but also how we digital will do storytelling. I think what is interesting when you look at that sort of diagram here is that this just shows that the trends are really interconnected. We often talk about an individual trend, but this shows how interconnected everything is. And let's have a look at the trends. The first trend that I'm very passionate about is that of creative leadership. Creativity, in my book, is what keeps organizations ahead. And it means that any leaders, no matter what industry, need to empower the team to generate and execute bold ideas. Many of you might have heard about this case study called Iceland Academy. Have anybody heard about the case study? Iceland Academy? Oh, great! Because it's 2 years old, but I like, as a futurist, to use case studies that are tried and tested. Iceland, as you all remember, had a natural disaster. Then they have also the economic collapse. And, really they had to come up with some bold ideas. And they created an unconventional social media campaign. They called it Iceland Academy. Now, the Iceland Academy was really an initiative to revive their tourism, to get more people to come to the island, and you could learn how to avoid hot tub awkwardness, staying safe in Iceland, and also traveling responsible. This is a video. You can go on the online thing, but it had already almost 3 million views since its start in January 2016, and 7,000 people completed the course online. So I think what you can take away from this case study is that it doesn't matter whether you are a destination or business, we all have a digital footprint. So it's crucial to have a top-notch, I would say, digital reputation, because when people hear about you, lots of people, influencers around the world, want to go to Iceland, and I think it's almost become a trend to go to Iceland. So who are the people that we really need to get under the skin of when we talk about tomorrow? I think those are the global citizens. We live in a liquid society where everything seems to be quite fluid, online and offline. It's sort of this fluidity. There is hardly any difference between, work and leisure. It is, of course, but we tend to sort of blend it in. And this case study here is from WeWork. It's an initiative that is global. This is the space in New York. They have 348 offices in 65 cities, and they've only been going for 8 years. It was an early trend to have those co-working spaces, and one that I really like is a space called Rome, where you can live and work in the same place. So imagine going to live and work in Bali, for example, for 3 months and just work. That is a dream for many. But I guess that the premise of WeWork is that it's not just a work environment, it's a place for people to make a life, not just a living. And I think that the takeaway here is that we have to understand that those global influencers or global citizens, they want to have opportunity to grow. It's about personal empowerment. And also, again, they celebrate diversity in a world where ideas and community are really the new social currency. So it's diversity of, I would say, thoughts about ideas, but also age and gender. So I would say that what we're talking about is very much an inclusive model where ideas can flourish. Now, speaking of new models, who is doing this really, really well? I mean, I like to look to the Nordic countries because being a Copenhagen Goodwill Ambassador and also really pioneering the idea of what the Nordic model do, I think that we in the Nordic countries have a lot to share with the rest of the world. Increasingly, you see that people, especially the global citizens, they want to be part of something bigger than themselves. When you ask young people today, what's your dream, what's your purpose? Many will say, I want to make this world a better world. So for me, it sounds like there's something we need to fix. IKEA have recently started their sort of Fab Lab, innovation lab in Copenhagen. They call it Space 10. And a year or so ago, I was passing through Copenhagen, and I saw this installation at Charlottenborg, and it's called the Growth Room. In fact, they work locally to do innovation, but then they have their designers, they have their thinkers, and a global network of people that help them test and create future concept of how can we, secure food in the future, what happens when more and more people go and live in cities, how can we make quality of life a standard in everything we do. And I think what is so great here is that IKEA and many also of the trendy brands, they engage in an open dialogue. They invite people into the equation of actively working to solve, I would say, the global challenges that we already see today in order to make the world a better place to be. And a lot of you have probably heard about this design thinking model. So every time you have a challenge, you use the design thinking to solve that. And I think that will be crucial to many new business models. Storytelling, blah, 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 blah. The next thing is story doing. And I think what we have to understand here that when we do story doing, we have to cut away all the crap. It's about less is more. That's why I use the microtrend intelligent reduction. Because if there are few things to engage with, it becomes much more meaningful. I think what we also must understand that when there is so much talk, people believe less and less in what you say and more in what you do. So I always say that they buy your actions, not your words. An interesting case study or an article in the Harvard Business Magazine actually said that story-doing companies often spend, let's say, a third of their marketing budget or a third of what a ordinary primary PR-driven company will do. So spending less, they somehow get 6 times more engagement. So stop talking, start doing is basically my premise here in this particular trend. And the rain room here, I don't know if anyone have seen this art installation. May I see some hands? Have anybody experienced the rain room? Did you like it? Great. So you haven't been there. And it's interesting that you said you've seen photos. I went in London, and it was amazing. You walk to the room, and when it detected a person, you didn't get wet. So it enabled human beings to control the rain. I arrived 2 years later, after I've first experienced that, in New York at the Museum of Modern Art, and I saw a queue, 8 hours waiting time. People were standing in the rain to get into the rain room. An amazing experience, and I thought, wow. And what I also found very interesting is that the rain room wasn't designed for social media, but it is perhaps the most successful online Instagrammable selfie art piece ever made. It wasn't really an art piece, it was just more an installation. And this has obviously given birth to new sort of selfie factories and arts for Instagram sake. I think they have the Color Laboratory in New York and the Museum for Ice Cream, something like that. But it's interesting to see how one exhibition really can lead to basically a need for create art for I would say, social media's sake. But interestingly enough, also I want to say New York, I just came back from Los Angeles. They have bought the rain room there for the permanent exhibition. So remember, story doing is much more impactful than simply just telling the story, do the story. Now, when we look to the sort of P for purpose, I think economics for humans is another really important trend. We're here today, we speak about human-to-human marketing. And tomorrow's map of success is clearly being redefined by leaders who says, I don't just want to be the best in the world, I also want to be the best for the world. That's a leader that I want to work for or work with. And this man there on this photograph is the CEO of Patagonia. His name is Yvon Chouinard. He's been a hero of mine for many years because he really engaged in purpose-driven leadership. He does it because it is something that he's always done. He started in the 1970s, and he started by doing hiking gear, and then he created all of that sort of outerwear clothes. And one of the things is, he says, don't throw this garment away, repair it, reuse it, don't even recycle it. So his whole premises, the way he built his brand is really a man of action. And why this is important is because people are behind movements and brands that speak to their integrity. We know when we see Patagonia, it is a brand that has a heart. And don't forget that customers and we as consumers, I don't like that word consumer, but people, we vote with our purse. Every time we spend money on buying something, that is our vote on a brand or an opinion. And this is really influencing businesses, brands, and perhaps even tomorrow's policy making. Well-being, capital, I've been speaking a lot about that. Sometimes I put the being in bracket because we want to feel well, we want to be. Mindfulness is a huge trend. In my opinion, perhaps it's taken over a little bit. It's a lot of talk about it, but still we talk about being mindful. But you can sort of ask yourself, how mindful are we? I read an article again a few years back that stayed in my mind. It's called Relax and You Will Be More Productive. And research shows that strategic renewal and self-care at work, having a little nap at work and having more holidays, in fact, boost our productivity and performance, and of course, our well-being. So my case study here is from Norway, and in fact, Norway's Public Road Administration, I've said almost a dinosaur organization, they decided some years ago to give all of their employees who would either walk or take the bicycle to work, they would get 1 week's extra holiday. It was a great thing because people got happier, healthier, they were less ill. So it meant they were also more productive. They saved money on transportation, they were fitter, and also, of course, they somehow polluted less. So this was all a really great case study. So the administration or the Public Road Administration say, hey, let's engage in something a little bit wilder. So they engaged in creative leadership. And they invited Norway's young artists, young architects, and also designers to design road pit stops around Norway's beautiful landscape. And the idea was to get people out of their cars and into the landscape and walk. And what's also interesting is that when you walk in nature, your creativity is increasing by 60%. I will say here that we must not forget that this is a good investment in the future, because health is our most important capital. And I think people increasingly will look to brands, they will partner with brands that makes them feel good, but also brands that honestly add to this, I would say, well-being dimension. The last trends here talks to us about the tools that we need in order to make the other, trends flow. In the digital transformation, we have more tools than ever, and we have really a great potential to create richer experiences for everyone. But always on, we are easier, of course, to read, but somewhat harder to engage. So in this space, I think that transparency and open dialogue is key. And again, as companies, don't ever forget the humane interface of everything you do, because this will be key to winning people. Don't just do what everybody else is doing. Try to dig a little bit deeper and understand what channels that your brands naturally would engage with, because you can't do it all at once. It has to be organically built. Now, this is a photo from Denmark. It's art, but I took that because in Denmark, of course, I just love that 360-degree installation on the top of Aarhus Art Museum in Aarhus. And as you can see, people are Instagramming and doing selfies. It has the rainbow color. It's called a rainbow panorama. But for me, it's such a positive piece. It inspires a future which is different. Now, for those of you who are not from the Nordic countries, I'm not sure whether you are aware, but in the Scandinavian countries, in fact, e-government, digital government, is now really the norm. We use open data to drive civic innovation and also policy making. And in Copenhagen, we have the Mind Lab, which is a cross-ministry fab lab to facilitate active environment of businesses and citizens to co-create and develop public sector solutions. So we might have a challenge, people might not like the challenge, but when they co-create, they take ownership. And I guess this is really the future, that the digital transformation give us tools that we've never had before. Another trend here, the last trends of the 8 trends I wanted to show, is seamless living. Smart cities already are connecting buildings, goods and services and people, and obviously they use real-time data to respond to personal needs while hopefully improving quality of life and experiences. And I guess here what we can say that the takeaway is that we have to remember that we live in a liquid society where physical and digital is now blurring, and in that context, of course, we want to have experiences that are seamless and, easy to engage with. Now, to connect the dots and really give you an idea of how you can get a quick view of the future, you're welcome to have my presentation. I like to share with you really how I look at futures. This is a 4P outlook, and I believe that the 4P communication model should be the standard in any communication department, because here you can see the key values and the trends that is driving change. And you can also understand who tomorrow's people are. You got here the rational, creative collaborators and the progressive optimizers. And really, they want social capital. My advice is to anyone, any organization that really want to tap into the community, build social capital, and don't forget the human interface. Be the human interface. Empower people and bring exciting new experiences. When you look at the emotional touch point, people who are sort of the tree huggers or the global sustainers, they will very much want to show, they want to know that you care, because if you care as an organization, people will also care about you. It is also about inviting participation, invite people into the equation. And I think human-centric will probably be a word you will hear a lot throughout the day, and really meaningful engagement. It's also about the dialogue you have with people, partner with people, because people really want to be part of brands that support their values. And I guess this is my keynote. I like to remind you that we can all become active change makers, but every one of us here in this room, we in a way embark on our unique journey, a journey in which we take control and ownership of the future that we want to see. Thank you very much.